Sure. So first of all, I'll just say I'm absolutely thrilled to be back in Kyiv. It's been a great week. I'm back in my home, as you can see, and I've been meeting with all of my contacts and friends and getting a real sense on the ground for what's going on, and it's wonderful to be back. The 2 months approximately that I was gone, we were right over the border in Rzeszów, Poland, so close to the Ukrainian border, and doing everything we could for Ukraine from that place. Because Rzeszów saw a lot of humanitarian assistance and also some defense assistance sort of coming through, we certainly helped facilitate that. We also met with a lot of visiting officials who were very interested in Ukraine, US officials who were very interested in Ukraine and would come to Poland to talk to the Poles, but then also to see what the operations were happening near to the border, including the 82nd Airborne, which is positioned also very close to Rzeszów. So we did a lot of talking, I guess, interacting with Americans, with others, helping to make sure that supplies going into Ukraine were going smoothly. Also, I kept in touch with all of my Ukrainian partners and contacts through Zoom and other means to make sure I could hear what was happening on the ground. And then just letting Washington know, what we were hearing from closer to Ukraine. Now that we're back in, of course, there's no replacement for in-person meetings. In the past week, I think I've met with at least probably 30 people. It's been a busy week, but it's been really, really useful for me to get a sense of what's going on. And that is very helpful because then I can let Washington know, here's the number one priority. Here's what they really need. Here's what they're asking for. I can convey all that back. So that's what I've been doing over the last few months. Your question about does it mean Kyiv is safer? Certainly, we all know that the Russian forces have pulled away from Kyiv, so there are no more Russian forces in close proximity. Of course, that makes it safer, but missiles still do arrive. I'm on the app with all the Ukrainians that tell you when a missile could be coming. And we are we're very careful about always trying to follow the rules. If a missile alert comes, we do try to go into shelter. So we feel with those cautions, as long as we're careful and follow, the rules and take shelter when the app goes off, we feel that we can operate safely here. Well, first of all, I would say that we do think sanctions have had some impact. Unfortunately, they haven't stopped Putin's horrible actions, but we do think that they're having an impact nevertheless. And the way sanctions work is that the impact isn't felt all at once. Sometimes it takes a while for the impact to be felt. And because we continue to put new sanctions on all the time, we just did some last week, the accumulated impact of those sanctions will become heavier and heavier and higher and higher. So while it has not stopped President Putin up to now, we hope that at the least it will constrain him. And obviously, ultimately, we would like it if it would help him lead to a decision that he will withdraw from Ukraine and stop his aggressive actions because of the impact it's having on Russia and its economy. In terms of lifting sanctions, there is no talk of lifting any sanctions right now. The future of any lifting sanctions, I think that's up to President Putin. Certainly not while he's in Ukraine, certainly not while he continues his aggression. And afterwards, honestly, I think I would have to just leave that to future negotiators to decide. But right now, there's no talk of lifting sanctions. There's only talk of taking more sanctions. So we're working closely with our EU and other world partners to make sure that sanctions are not just our sanctions, but global sanctions, and will continue to do so. Well, President Biden has already said that the use of both chemical weapons or obviously nuclear weapons would have very, very severe consequences for Russia and for President Putin. We certainly hope that Russia does not take that step. We have not seen any indication at this point that Russia is planning to take that step, and we hope that that continues. Well, I can't really comment on internal discussions in Congress. That is up to congressional purview, and we'll see what happens there. President Biden has said that he does not intend to put boots on the ground right now, so that's currently our position. Well, what Lend-Lease does for the president is give him more flexibility and more ease of procuring and sending weapons to Ukraine. So it just makes it easier because, you know, normally to send weapons to another country is a pretty complicated process, and it makes that process quicker and easier. I would also add that Congress now is considering $40 billion in further assistance for Ukraine. Quite a large chunk of that, over half of it, will be security assistance. So not only will President Biden then have the flexibility to do that quickly, but he will also have the resources to do it. So that's very important. What I would say in terms of what to expect, we are on the phone at the highest levels every day with our Ukrainian counterparts discussing what Ukraine needs, what Ukraine's assessment is. So I can't really preview what those conversations will look like, other than to say that our defense secretaries talk, frequently, regularly. Our chief Zaluzhny talks to our Milley, our Joint Chiefs of Staff, all the time. Our presidents talk regularly. Our national security advisors talk regularly. So we're definitely having discussions and getting in-depth assessments from Ukraine of what it needs. And then as quickly as we can, trying to match those with what we have in stocks and what we're able to provide.
How much time you need, for example, to provide first part of weapons? It's a month or some weeks or some days? How much time can it take?
Well, with Lend-Lease, I think it'll be even quicker. And I can tell you that the speed at which we've been able to provide quite a number of weapon systems to Ukraine has been unprecedented in the past. It's because we recognize the urgency of the situation and the importance of getting things to Ukraine as quickly as possible so they can be in the hands of Ukraine's defenders. So, for instance, I would say some of the more recent systems that we provided, including the howitzer, came very quickly. I mean, in an unprecedented, number of, I think, days to weeks. It was not a slow process, and we hope that can continue. That this quick provision of what we're able to provide can continue. Well, as I noted before, we don't have military forces on the ground in Ukraine, and it's our policy not to. So we are unable ourselves to go in and try to evacuate. My understanding is that there are some negotiations going on, and we hope and call upon Russia to let the wounded out, first of all, and those who are helping the wounded, the medics and those sorts of folks. But then, any kind of situation in which there is an opportunity to have the normal rules of the Geneva Convention followed, they should be followed. Unfortunately, Russia has shown that it doesn't like to follow those rules. It is not sticking to the rules of the Geneva Convention, and we call upon Russia to follow those rules and to not act in a way that basically counteracts them, and in some cases, as we've seen, leads to things that are clearly in the realm of war crimes.
2.5 years ago, in October 2018, 40 American congressmen demanded that Ukrainian Azov battalion should be equated with terrorism. like now the whole world see what this Azov is actually is, how they defending our Mariupol. So what do you think? Has the attitude of Americans toward Azov has changed?
Well, definitely. I mean, there are a number of monikers that legally you put on countries who behave in horrible ways. So war crimes is one of them, and already the United States, despite the fact we haven't had any trials yet, the United States has basically said clearly they're committing atrocities and war crimes. The other monikers that they put on this are something that's, we hesitate to get in front of the legal process because ultimately it is a legal process. And that doesn't mean that we don't see things that we think fit the category of those things. In fact, I can tell you I've seen things that I think fit these categories personally. But the fact is you have to have the legal process behind it. And that's why we're a little hesitant sometimes to just come out and say, yes, Russia is this or Russia is that. So in this, state sponsor of terrorism, it's a similar thing where we don't want to get ahead of the careful review that leads to something like that. But we are certainly looking into all of these things and collecting the information as best we can with our Ukrainian partners to be able to hold everybody to account. I guess our view is that ultimately what the end state looks like, what is victory for Ukraine, is really up to Ukraine. We don't want to dictate what Ukraine should do in trying to reach a conclusion to this, nor do we want to tell Ukraine it has to make concessions. That's not our place. It's really whatever the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government find acceptable is what we will support. So we will support what Ukraine thinks is an acceptable solution. So I don't want to presuppose what that is because I think we really do want to leave it to Ukraine. We have not been involved in negotiations up to now. We are, of course, are supporting Ukraine in those negotiations in a sense that we want to help in any way we can to reach an end state which is acceptable to Ukraine, and we'll continue to do that, but we're not engaging ourselves in the negotiations. Well, I think I can say without presupposing too much that of course United States will help in the rebuilding of Ukraine. I don't think we're the only country. I think that many countries around the world will want to help Ukraine to rebuild from this horrible catastrophe that was brought about by Russia. And we will search for ways that we can support that, probably in multiple ways. Certainly with money, but also with know-how, technology, and of course we would love to have US companies involved to help. And all that I'm sure will come to pass. And we hope that we can start that as soon as the worst of the hostilities are over, because I do think it's very important that Ukraine rebuilds and rebuilds quickly. And ultimately, I strongly feel that in the end, Ukraine could come out of this a new country. I mean, an even better country, a stronger country with international support and rebuilding in a way that makes Ukraine basically consistent with the EU and Western norms and ready to sort of further integrate with the West. Wow. First of all, I would say that I will definitely never forget the past. I've actually been here 3 years now this month. So I will never forget it's okay. I'll never forget the past 3 years. I mean, they will, I can't imagine that my career will ever have a more meaningful, sort of important, work to do than what I and my team. I mean, I don't do it by myself, obviously. I have a very good, fabulous team with me. I feel like the work we do is really important. I would say that just I've always loved Ukraine and I've always loved Ukrainians, but I've got to tell you, my admiration has only grown exponentially in the last 3 months to see, Ukraine's spirit, strength, resilience, creativity and innovativeness in terms of addressing this horrible, horrible tragedy that Russia has brought to it. And I do think that Ukraine is going to emerge from this even stronger, united, and ready to sort of take on the future in a way that it was before, but even more than that. And so I can't wait first of all, I can't wait for this war to end, obviously, but I can't wait to see how Ukraine does, because I think Ukraine will do incredibly well. I think Ukraine will just blossom and will be a real, you'll have the whole world behind you, and you will only have everybody's good wishes and will to see you fully integrate with the West, with Europe, and be able to, be a peaceful, prosperous country, which I think has always been the hope, but even more so now. Well, as you probably saw last week, we have somebody in the ambassadorial process who was in her hearing, and so that process will continue. And if she is confirmed by the U.S. Senate, she will probably be out fairly soon. Once she's here, I will go, because it's she'll be the ambassador. But I will go back to Washington for the time being, and then see what happens next. Well, I've known Ambassador Brink for about 15 years. She and I worked together actually in the White House, and so I know her well. She's a wonderful, first of all, she's a wonderful person. Second of all, she's a wonderful ambassador, really experienced, and also has a lot of experience with Ukraine and with the region. So honestly, she'll come in fully prepped. I mean, she will be ready to be 100% effective on day one. And of course, I'll do everything I can to give her all my best tips and advice, but I already know she'll be terrific. And I think that Ukrainians will really enjoy working with her. Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to see you again. I always enjoy talking to you, and I hope we do get to talk again soon.